Let me tell you an amazing story that has nothing to do about food. This is my personal history. Okay, so here I am in whatever it is. Let's say it was 2018, and I get a call, and it's from my dad's little brother from Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So my dad had a little brother because my dad had a big brother from Big Brothers and Big Sisters when his dad died when he was 12 and he had to go out into the workforce. This is like 1940. At 12 years old,
Mm.
he had to support his whole family. And so he never finished high school. He never went to college. And then he had this big brother who supported him, emotionally during some of his teenage years. And then he sort of became, like, I don't need anyone anymore. I'm going to take care of myself. But when he wanted to marry someone, her dad said, "You cannot marry my daughter because you haven't even finished high school." He decided he wanted to take a different path with his life. And he called up his ex big brother from back when he was a teen. This is now in his late 20s, and asked him, "How do I do this?" And that man, Jack Goldstein, guided him, helped him apply to trade school, and then he went to college, and then he went to MIT Business School. He started from GED and finished at Sloan School. Okay, so this a lot of raw material there, but didn't have a lot of direction. Well, then at some point in his life, my dad became a big brother to Stuart. Stuart then became a big brother to Michael. And it turns out the reason I was getting this phone call, back to the beginning of my story, is because Jack Goldstein to Abe Setnick to Stuart Ferenczi to Michael was the longest chain of big brothers that had happened in the history of the organization in Boston, and they wanted to celebrate that. And so I went out to Boston to this event, and I created a video that showed pictures, and my goal was to say, you may be in the Big Brothers, it's Big Brothers and Big Sisters now, you may be in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program now, and you're helping someone, but what you have no possible way of knowing is how you are helping that
Mm.
person's next generation. In other words, if Jack Goldstein hadn't been a big brother in 1940,
Yeah.
who knows where we would be right now. And it's something that we're never going to see because we're never going to live long enough to see 100 years later what the impact of the changes are. And honestly, that's not just how I approach healing your inner eater. It's also how I approach my work in the eating disorder field, because there are so many problems in our field. There are so many problems with the way we help people with eating disorders. There are so many things we think we know about eating disorders that are going to eventually be proven wrong. And I won't be alive to see those things. And so setting the stage for those things makes me feel like I'm giving a legacy to the future professionals and the future patients that they'll
Yeah.
treat, even though I'll never meet any of those people.
I love that you care about something that's maybe 100 years off. That's
Well, isn't that such a famous saying, like something about
yeah,
planting a tree that you'll never
yeah,
sit under, something like that? But
yeah,
it's not a hopeless feeling. To me, that's a very hopeful feeling that the seeds I'm planting now. I mean, I think about some of the people in my family. I have 4.5-year-old triplets in my family, and every once in a while I can get kind of morose about it. Like, oh my gosh, when they're old enough to have kids, like, I don't know, I'd be a
yeah,
1,000 years old. I try not to think about where I'll be at that point, but I don't think I'll be alive. And it and then I think, but that's okay because maybe
yeah.
I could cry just thinking about it. Maybe one of those triplets will tell their kids about me the way that I
Mhm.
tell them about my dad who's no longer living. And I think that's how we stay alive and have an impact. Is it doesn't even have to be our name that someone says, but just the idea that someone's teaching someone something that I taught them. That's an amazing ripple effect. I just think we all have so much more impact than we probably ever
Choking me
imagined.
up. God.
Well, I'm getting teary too. But that's the thing. People go into the field
Mhm.
thinking, I did, thinking I'm going to talk about milligrams of calcium and molecules. And I memorized the Krebs cycle, thinking I'm going to be drawing that for
Yeah,
patients. And then you go into the real world and you realize, like, for example, I once had a patient who came back on the second visit and she said, "I told everyone I know what you told me
what I
last
tell
week."
you.
And I'm thinking, what groundbreaking thing
Yeah,
did I tell you? Because
right,
I don't remember anything groundbreaking. And she said, I said, what was it? She said that it's okay to enjoy what you eat.
right,
So
right.
here I am thinking I'm going to be talking about all the vitamins, and oh my God, I don't have it memorized. How many IUs of vitamin
Yeah,
B12 are you supposed to get in a day? Right? And it's so much different.
Yeah.
It's so much more personal and emotional and
Yeah.
heartfelt.
Yeah.
I just yes. Yes,
Isn't that
yes to
such a
all of
funny
it. I
moment too,
love
where
it so
somebody says,
much.
you told me this thing, and you're like, you sit back and you're like, okay, where is this gonna go? What did I tell them? But yeah, that's
Yes. Yes, I had another situation where a dietitian that I did not remember meeting, I just knew I knew her name and we had sort of corresponded here and there via email every once in a while. Well, when I really got to know her, she said, maybe this was actually why I got to know her because she emailed me and said, I just wanted to tell you I spoke about having bipolar disorder for the first time in a presentation, and I wanted to tell you that 10 years ago, I heard you speak at Fancy, and when you said from the podium that you were in recovery from your own eating disorder, that was the first time I had heard a professional say that, and it was so impactful, and I wanted to tell you it took 10
wow.
years for me to get to that place where I felt so not ashamed, but I wanted to tell you you
Yeah.
started that process 10 years ago, and I was floored. I don't remember saying that. I mean, obviously I did, but it was just one more
Yeah.
thing that flies out of my mouth, because I don't have much of a filter. And yet, here's someone
Right.
that it made this big difference to. And so I think that everyone that treats eating disorders, or even is just a helping professional, or even is a friend, like you really don't realize how
Yeah.
much impact you have.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to ask you about is at this conference, this neuro conference, we are showcasing a lot of dietitians. About half of our in person presenters are dietitians, and we have a bunch more on the virtual. Yeah. And I was wondering what you thought about that because
Phenomenal.
we've sometimes heard that sometimes at food and food related conferences, eating disorder, that dietitians can feel like not showcased or even not having a voice. So,
Isn't that interesting? Yes. And so part of what I think is a problem in our field that is under recognized is that our whole field was started by a specific profession with a specific demographic and based on a specific avatar of eating disorder. So it's not just that many groups have been ignored, they've been purposefully excluded. And it's a weird thought, right? But if you believe that all people with eating disorders are SWAG, you know that acronym? Skinny white adolescent girls. If you think that everyone with an eating disorder is a girl who doesn't eat enough to sustain life and is emaciated, then you're not seeing the spectrum. And if your point of view is PhD psychologist, which is how our field was founded, no shade to PhD psychologists, you might be one. But if that's how our field was founded, and the belief was that this is sort of a hysterical disease that girls are giving to themselves, then the solution is psychoanalysis or something like that, or even being institutionalized. And it's not actually about nutrition education, et cetera, et cetera. To call. I wanted to
you
separate that
probably
so you could
won't, but
edit it out
okay,
if you want
keep
to.
going.
So when you think about that, and then you think, okay, some of these eating disorder professional organizations flowed from those same kind of biases, those same kind of small, siloed, interbred pools. It's not
We
quite the
got
right
you.
word. I know I mixed a lot of metaphors there. But it makes sense why things, not just dietitians, but what about expressive therapies? Right? I mean, all kinds of things are not necessarily just left out, but purposefully excluded from research, things like that. Now, the irony, of course, is a lot of research does include dietitians, but because they're not in the research protocol, the research results reflect the work of dietitians, but they're not actually credited. So it's
Okay,
a big old
that's not
mess,
good.
basically, Trevor. And so what flows from all that is that if you have these professional organizations having conferences and their mindset is our audience is mental health professionals, they don't think of dietitians as mental health professionals. If they think our topics are eating disorders, they don't think of dietitians. So if they're not reaching out to dietitians to ask for proposals, if they're not actively seeking dietitians for part of their membership, right? I know that I was the one for a long time. I won't name names, okay? I want to, but I won't. But there's one eating disorder organization that I think I applied to 18 years in a row and was rejected. And then I was accepted once and I went to the conference. And it was one of those things where I was like, finally, I'm in. And then I get to the conference and I'm
Mm,
like, I don't want to be in. This is so not my people. And so I never applied again. Another conference I I applied, and oh, by the way, every time, and maybe everybody does this, or maybe I'm the only one. Maybe it's petty of me, but if I don't get accepted, I don't submit proposals anymore. That's not my world. But at the time when I was submitting proposals to eating disorder conferences, if I submitted and then didn't get accepted, I would always look at the program of who did get selected so I could see, oh, this is what the presenter or the organizers had in mind. Oh, maybe next year I can sort of use this as a guide, a template to what they're looking for. And I can have a presentation or proposal that gets further in the process. And sometimes when I started getting more courageous and I would look at that agenda months later and see, I already knew I wasn't accepted and I would see 0 or 1 RD credential, I started contacting the organizations because at this point I had started IFED, the International Federation of Eating Disorder Dietitians, and that gave me courage. I call it my Girl Scout vest because my daughter used to be very shy, but she'd put on her Girl Scout vest and she would march up to a stranger's house and sell them Girl Scout cookies. So IFED is my Girl Scout vest. I put it on and I would send an email that would say something like, I saw the agenda for your upcoming conference. And I noticed that there's only one dietitian on the schedule or no dietitians on the schedule. How can I help your organization reach out to more dietitians? I have 500, 600 dietitians, eating disorder dietitians, some of whom are public speakers. If you could let me know what kind of talks you're looking for, what kind of speakers you're looking for, I could help connect you so that you could have a more well-rounded program next year. I never got a response to any of these. I could name the organizations, but I'm not going to because maybe they're different now. Let's hope. But I have to tell you something kind of funny and maybe devious that I did. One organization responded to me and said, kind of like, too bad, but we have no way of knowing if someone is a dietitian or not because our proposal process is completely blinded and we don't know who's submitting a proposal. And I thought, that cannot be right. You're saying like a high school student could submit a proposal and be selected just based on their proposal because you have no idea who is submitting, not even what their credentials are. That sounds like what they were telling me. So the following year for that conference,
It's up to
I don't
you.
know, should I admit this or not? Okay, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid. I don't think I've ever said this in public. I may have told a few people, but the next year to that very conference, I submitted
Okay, you're testing the
3
system.
different proposals. Okay, I did not lie. Okay, I used my name on all of them, but I used a totally different style of writing and proposal on each one. This was before AI. Like with AI, you could totally be like, take this topic, write me 3 proposals, one from the point of view of a psychiatrist, one from the point of view of a dietitian, one from the point of view of a patient with lived experience. But that's what I did. I took the time to write 3 completely different proposals on not as a psychiatrist, because I didn't pretend I was a psychiatrist, but it was like there were citations in my proposal, like references, not in the section where they say what are the references, like all throughout. I was like citing things and it was like very scientific. The next one I did like the normal me. And then the third one I was talking about, it was a proposal to talk about my experience as the support person for a loved one going through addiction treatment and what we in the eating disorder field maybe could learn from the addiction treatment family support process. 3 totally different proposals that there was no way anyone could have traced back to me if they were not looking at names and credentials. All 3 rejects. So
I love that.
I'm just saying, I think there's something very shady about
Yeah.
that process. And I don't even remember what your original question was, but oh, you said dietitians aren't often on the conference program. I think it's one of those things where if you don't think dietitians are your target audience, then why would you invite dietitians to speak? But this is what makes the neuro conference, I think, very different. And what you inherited from the Center for Change conference was different too. The only conference I know of, there might be a couple others nowadays, but for a long time, it was the only conference where everyone sits in the same room. There are no breakout sessions. There's no nutritionist track. Everybody sits in the same room and gets the same education. It's like there is no hierarchy here. There is a doctor,
Hmm.
an MD sitting next to the art therapist. right? And what's so cool about that, besides from the point of view of like, wow, I'm respected just as much as these other professionals, I love that aspect of it, but you're connecting with them, you're hearing the questions they ask to the same presenter. We're all getting the same information, so that it's not like dietitians are just learning to become better dietitians, counselors are learning to become better counselors, nurses are learning to become better nurses. Everybody's
Yeah.
learning everything. And to me, that's
Yeah.
what we're really trying to bring to the eating
Yeah.
disorder community, is that
So what do you think it
collaboration
will mean to
instead
the
of the
dietary
silence.
community that we are showcasing the dietitians at this, at this conference, this level? We're really excited about this part.
First of all, you can't call us the dietary community because dietitians will not like that. And don't spell it with
What
a
do they
C.
like? What would they
Dietitians don't like that. But if you said nutrition therapist, what would it mean to dietitians, who work in eating disorders, or what would it mean to the nutrition therapist? I would say it means a lot. It means you are saying you are a part of the team. It's like, what do you mean have a conference with no dietitians? Why would we do that? What do you mean have a conference with no dietitians on the
Yeah.
agenda? That would be a failing, right? It's so cool that it wasn't even an issue of, well, we already have one keynote speaker. We can't have a dietitian be a keynote speaker. There's none of that. And I feel like some of that is what happens behind the scenes. The other thing that happens behind the scenes, I have to say, is of course that there will be a request for proposals. And then what you didn't know, when you get the program and you see there's 40 sessions, you didn't know that 38 of those sessions were already selected by subunits and by sponsors and by whatever, and the organizer's best friend. And so really you submitted your proposal and it looks like you didn't get chosen for 40 slots, but you really
Interesting.
didn't get chosen for 2 slots. And what I love about your group is you did the exact opposite. You said, we have so many amazing proposals from so many amazing professionals. We're going to add an entire day of just
Yeah.
online presentations because we don't want to cut any of these people. We don't want to
Totally.
lose information.
Yeah.
I've never heard of a conference doing that
Yeah,
before.
it's exciting. It's going to be awesome. So, one more question for you. One of the funnest things too about the conference that I'm so excited about is we're going to have a book fair, and where all the authors that are coming are
Book
going to
fair.
have their books out, and we're going to have a social time and networking and drinks and food, and it's going to be so fun. But I'm so excited for that. But
I
what's this
can't wait.
talk? I heard some talk that maybe you were going to be trying to give your book away to the participants.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is like, yeah, this is intel. I am in talks with a sponsor to join IFED in sponsoring the networking dinner and give out my book for free, because I'm hoping that I will be able to unveil the world premiere at the Neuro Conference of the third edition of
Oh
the
my
Eating
gosh!
Disorders Clinical Pocket Guide. If I can pull that off, I want everyone who attends to have a copy. So that is my goal, because I will tell you, the original Eating Disorders Clinical Pocket Guide is the most shoplifted book at eating
Oh,
disorder
really?
conferences worldwide, because it looks like a sample. It's small, it's pocket size. So when I put like 20 of them out on a table, people walk by and they think it's a sample. I learned to just put one book on the table that says sample on it, but it is in demand. It's a hot item, and I'm about to come out with the third edition, and I really have to have timelines in order to keep me on track. So if my goal is to have that book by the Neuro conference, knowing that 150 people who attend are going to be expecting it, that is some awesome motivation for me to get it done
I'm
and get it
so
ready and get a
excited about
sponsor.
that. All right, well, pressure's up, and we definitely put you on the spot about that. Jessica, so next time I see you, it'll be in person here in Salt Lake City, May 8th and 9th.
Love
It's
it.
going to be
So
so
excited.
fun. And I just really look forward to that. And thank you for sharing so much of your wisdom. And
Thank
the,
you.
the presentation is going to be dynamite.
Thanks. And I have to say, anyone listening who's not already signed up, do it. I don't know if you mentioned that the book fair is open to everyone. It's free. It's right after the conference ends. It's just going to be a time to get together, meet your favorite author, get your book signed. And of course, I'll be at the whole conference. So anyone who is planning to attend that wants to meet, let's do it. And we'll probably have lots of opportunities to schmooze, which is so fun, especially I'm just thinking of all the people
Yeah.
I know that I already know are going. So yeah, I hope anyone with questions will let you know. But I'm excited. If anyone wants to reach out to me directly, my email is jessica@jessicasetnick.com, and we'll make
Okay.
plans to meet up at
Can't
the
wait,
event.
Jessica. Thanks so much.
Same.